My name is Maya. I'm 32 years old, and I grew up in one of those small Ohio towns where family isn't just important, it's a full-time obligation. My parents live 10 minutes away from my grandmother, my aunts live another 10 minutes past that, and everyone knows exactly how long it takes you to drive from your front door to theirs. If you're late, Nana Rose will mention it. If you don't show up at all, she'll treat it like a crime against blood. Holidays were never optional. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July. If there was food on the table and at least 3 relatives in the room, it was a family gathering. Growing up, I thought that's how everyone lived. Later, I realized it was more like a soft prison sentence with casseroles. On my mom's side, my Aunt Linda has one daughter, Brianna. She's 2 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, she's been the golden child. You know the type. Some people are pretty, some are charming. Brianna walks into a room and warps the gravity. Eyes shift toward her like she's the only person in focus. She has that kind of beauty you see in shampoo commercials and clothing ads. Long, honey blonde hair, big blue eyes, perfect skin that never seems to break out, legs that look airbrushed even in bad lighting. She could show up in sweatpants and a messy bun, and some guy would still trip over a chair trying to open a door for her. The worst part isn't that she's beautiful, it's that she knows exactly how much power it gives her, and she uses it. As teenagers, I learned what it meant to be Brianna's cousin. No matter where we went together, school events, church, the park, I was the placeholder, the one you talk to while you wait for her to arrive. If a boy liked me, he liked me until he saw her. Then suddenly I was the safe friend, the one you vent to about how out of your league she is. I thought that would stop when we got older. I was wrong. The first time she really took something that mattered from me, I was 23. His name was Sean. He was a web designer, quiet, thoughtful, not exactly the center of attention in a crowded room. But when he looked at me, really looked at me, I felt like the only person there. We'd been dating for 4 months, and he was the first man I thought might actually go somewhere long-term. When Thanksgiving rolled around, he said, "I want to meet your family. If I'm going to be in your life, I should know where you come from." I tried to warn him. I told him my family was loud, nosy, and a little bit ruthless. I told him about the interrogations disguised as small talk. I didn't tell him about Brianna. I didn't know how without sounding paranoid. We showed up at Aunt Linda's house that afternoon. The place smelled like roasted turkey, onions, and too many people talking at once. My mom hugged Sean like she'd been waiting years to meet him. My dad shook his hand, did the firm grip man-to-man evaluation that fathers do. My uncles dragged him into a debate about football. Everything felt normal for about 15 minutes. Then Brianna arrived. She walked in wearing a tight emerald dress that looked like it had been sprayed onto her body, with heels that made her almost as tall as Sean. This was a family Thanksgiving in our aunt's slightly outdated living room, and she was dressed like she was about to walk into a rooftop bar in the city. Her eyes landed on Sean, and I swear I watched the shift happen in real time. That little light, like she'd just spotted a new toy she wanted. "Oh my God, so this is Sean," she said, gliding over like she was on tracks. She flashed him a perfect smile. "I've heard absolutely nothing about you. Maya is so secretive." She laughed like it was a joke. Everyone laughed with her. I didn't. She hugged him. It was just long enough to be inappropriate, but not quite long enough for anyone besides me to notice. I felt my stomach twist, but I told myself I was being dramatic. I'd been preparing myself to be too sensitive, too jealous since I was a kid. That's what everyone said. At first, Sean stayed close to me. During dinner, his knee brushed mine under the table, his hand resting on my thigh, his eyes flicking over whenever someone brought up an embarrassing childhood memory. It made me feel steady. After dinner, we all crowded into the living room. Some people were watching the game, some were talking, kids were running through the house like feral cats. Sean and I managed to get a spot at one end of the couch, bodies squeezed in around us. That's when Brianna drifted over with a glass of wine, acting like she didn't see all the empty chairs nearby. Without asking, she wedged herself right between Sean and me, her attention only on him. "Sorry, so crowded. she murmured, not even glancing at me, her thigh pressing against his. She started asking him about his job, his hobbies, how he got into design. Every time she laughed, she put a hand on his arm. Every time he said something mildly interesting, she leaned in like he'd revealed a deep secret. I sat there staring at the TV without seeing it, my whole body stiff. Sean looked uncomfortable at first. I could see it in the way he shifted his shoulders, in the awkward little glances in my direction. But he's a guy, and she's Brianna. Little by little, the discomfort started to soften into something else. Curiosity, flattered interest, the kind of look I'd seen 1,000 times on other people. Later that night, I went to the kitchen to refill my drink and found them there alone. Brianna standing close, her hand flat on his chest, head tipped back as she laughed. His face was red, his smile apologetic. When they noticed me, she turned with that innocent, wide-eyed expression she'd perfected years ago. "Relax, May," she said lightly. "We were just talking. He was telling me how lucky I am to have a cousin like you." She gave me a sweet little smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We broke up 3 weeks later. Sean told me he needed space, that his feelings had changed, that I deserved someone who was all in. I saw a picture of him and Brianna tagged together at a bar 2 months after that. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, both of them smiling like they'd always been meant for each other. Soon it wasn't just Sean. There was Ethan, a teacher I dated at 25. At a 4th of July barbecue, I watched Brianna pin him next to the dessert table, telling him all about her volunteer work with at-risk kids. They exchanged numbers to coordinate something. I found messages between them later, long, late-night texts that had nothing to do with charity. There was Logan, an accountant, who went over to Brianna's apartment to help her move furniture. Apparently, helping with heavy lifting didn't require my presence. When I confronted him, he got defensive immediately. He said things like, "You're being controlling," and "You just don't trust me," and "Brianna's just being friendly." It didn't matter who I dated. Eventually, the same thing happened. She'd turn the charm on, find a way to get him alone, sink her hooks in, and I'd end up alone while my family told me that I was too sensitive or too insecure. When I complained, my mom would say, "That's just how Brianna is, sweetie. She flirts with everyone. Don't take it so personally." My Aunt Linda, Brianna's mother, once looked me straight in the eye and said, "If you can't handle a little competition, maybe don't bring your boyfriends around until you're sure of them." My grandmother offered the most painful advice of all. If you put a bit more effort into your looks, men wouldn't stray so easily. I started to believe that maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't enough. So I stopped bringing anyone. For years. I still dated, I still tried, but my relationships lived in a separate, protected world, far away from holiday gatherings and Sunday dinners. I told my family I was busy, focused on my career, happy on my own. I became an expert at pretending. Then, when I was 31, I met someone that made hiding feel wrong. His name was Andre. We didn't meet at a bar or a party or through friends. We met in the most unexpected place, the library. On Monday nights, my local library ran a literacy and re-entry program. Volunteers helped people who were trying to rebuild their lives after prison, resumes, basic computer skills, reading and writing. I signed up because I needed something to do that wasn't obsessing over my own problems. I thought I'd go once or twice, feel better about myself, and move on. Andre was in my group. He was 34, tall, with close-cropped dark hair, and a stillness that made him seem older than he was. His eyes were tired but alert, always noticing everything. He had rough hands that looked like they belonged to someone who knew what real work felt like. He'd just gotten out after serving 6.5 years for an armed robbery he'd been involved in at 19. Wrong friends, stupid choices, the kind of story that's way too common and never gets a second chapter in most people's minds. He was there because he wanted to learn how to write a proper cover letter. When I asked him what kind of job he was looking for, he didn't act tough or defensive. He just said, "Anything that lets me go to bed tired because I worked all day, not because I'm trying to forget where I've been." That honesty disarmed me. Week after week, we worked on his resume, his cover letters, his interview answers. We talked about how to explain his past without letting it define him. He told me about the confusion of coming out to a world that had moved on without him. How even the smallest things, using a phone, ordering online, felt new and strange. In return, I told him about my job as a project coordinator, about deadlines and cranky clients. I told him about my love for hiking in the woods behind my parents' old neighborhood, how that was the only place I'd always felt calm. I told him vaguely about my family. I said things like, they're intense, and my cousin is a lot. But I didn't go deeper. He didn't interrupt when I spoke. He didn't dismiss my feelings or tell me I was overreacting. When I mentioned how my family always made me feel like I was the problem, he tilted his head and said, "You know it's not normal for people who love you to make you feel crazy for being hurt, right?" Something about the way he said that stuck with me. There was a rule in the program that volunteers weren't supposed to contact participants outside of sessions. No friendships, no social media, no casual texting. It was meant to protect everyone. So when Andre finished the program and officially graduated, I assumed I'd never see him again. But one evening, as I was leaving the library, he was waiting by the front doors. He handed me a crumpled paper, his first official job offer from a construction company. "You helped me get this," he said quietly. "I know we're not supposed to, but can I at least buy you a coffee to say thank you?" I hesitated for about 3 seconds. Then I nodded. That coffee turned into another, then dinner, then walks by the river. We talked about everything. His years inside, my years feeling invisible, the strange ways both of us had learned how to protect ourselves. He never played games. He didn't use silence or jealousy as tools. If he said he'd call, he called. If something bothered him, he said it out loud. If I went quiet, he didn't make it about himself. "Are you shutting down or just thinking?" he'd ask, and the fact that he noticed made me feel seen in a way I never had before. After a few months, it was clear we weren't just casually seeing each other. He met my friends. We started leaving toothbrushes at each other's places. My heart, the part of me that had been sitting behind a locked door for years, started to lean forward. He kept asking about my family. "When do I get to meet the people who made you this way?" he'd joke. "The ones who taught you to overthink everything and apologize for existing?" "I'm not sure they deserve to meet you," I'd say, half serious. Finally, one night, lying on the couch with my head on his chest and the TV murmuring in the background, I told him everything about Brianna. I told him about the boyfriends, the stolen kisses, the long hugs, the late-night texts. I told him about the emerald dress, the furniture moving, the volunteer project that wasn't really about charity. I told him how every man I'd ever introduced to my family somehow drifted toward her orbit. I waited for him to laugh, to say I was exaggerating, to say, "Come on, Maya, no one's that bad." Instead, he went quiet. His arms tightened around me a little, grounding me. "So your whole life," he said slowly, "you've been taught that her cruelty is your insecurity, and your feelings are the real problem." That phrasing hit me like a punch. "I don't want to bring you into that," I whispered. "I couldn't stand watching you change in front of her like the others did. I think it would break something in me I can't put back together." He shifted so he could look me in the eye. "Maya, I spent years surrounded by people who lie, manipulate, and scan every room for weakness," he said. "Your cousin might be beautiful, but trust me, she's not new to me, and I'm not a 20-year-old kid anymore." My mother called a week later, reminding me that Thanksgiving was coming up. She asked if I was finally going to bring my mystery boyfriend around, or if I was planning on hiding him forever. I looked at Andre sitting at my small kitchen table, filling out paperwork for a training course, his brow furrowed in concentration. Something in me shifted. "I'll be there," I said, "and I'm bringing him." Thanksgiving morning, my nerves were shot. I must have changed my sweater 4 times. Andre, on the other hand, was calm. He put on a nice dark shirt and clean jeans, shaved, and asked, "Do I look presentable enough for the Council of Judgment?" In this family, there is no enough, I said, trying to joke. On the drive over, I gave him one last warning. She's going to come after you, I said. She'll flirt. She'll touch you. She'll try to get you alone. She'll say things about me. Please, I am begging you. Don't let her get to you. Don't give her anything she can twist. He reached over, took my hand, and brought it to his lips. I'm not going anywhere, he said. You hear me? I survived prison. I can survive your cousin. We walked into my parents' house, and for a moment, it felt like every other holiday. My mom rushed to the door, hugging me like I'd been gone for years. My dad shook Andre's hand, then clapped him on the shoulder like they'd known each other since high school. Within 5 minutes, they were talking about lumber prices and how hard it was to get good workers these days. And then I felt it, the shift in the air, the way conversations seemed to tilt slightly. Brianna walked in from the kitchen, carrying a tray of appetizers like she was on a cooking show. She wore a deep burgundy dress that dipped in the front and hugged every curve. Her hair fell in perfect waves, her makeup flawless. She didn't look like she was going to eat turkey with her family. She looked like she was hoping someone would photograph her. Her gaze found Andre, and I watched the mental gears start turning behind her eyes. So, she said, sauntering over. This must be Andre. I've heard nothing about you at all. Maya keeps everything to herself. She shot me a fake hurt look, then extended her hand. I'm Brianna, the cousin. Andre shook her hand, polite but brief. Nice to meet you, he said. Maya's told me a bit about the family. Oh? She replied, glancing at me. All good things, I'm sure. How long have you two been together? She asked, turning her attention back to him. A few months, I said. That's cute, she said, dismissive and sugary at once. And how did you meet? I froze, unsure how much of his past he wanted her to know. At the library, Andre said calmly. I was in a re-entry program. She volunteered. She helped me get my first job when I got out. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly at got out. That's noble of her, she said, eyes glittering in a way that made my skin crawl. Maya always did love a project. She moved into her usual pattern then, asking him questions, complimenting his tattoos, laughing too loudly, standing just a little too close. I watched her run the same script she'd run on every other man I'd brought here, the one my family had always pretended was harmless. But Andre was different. He was friendly, but there was a distance in his eyes when he looked at her, like she was one more person in the room, not some sun he needed to orbit. He kept a hand resting on the small of my back whenever she floated near. At one point, she accidentally spilled a little gravy on her wrist and jokingly asked, You're strong, right? Can you help me with some chairs in the garage? Her eyes all but screamed, Come alone. Andre smiled politely. I think your dad's got that covered, he said, then turned and asked my grandmother how long she'd been using the same stuffing recipe. I saw a flicker of something ugly cross Brianna's face. During dinner, she sat directly across from us and did everything she could to drag his attention away. Asked him about music, movies, his thoughts on travel, pretending to find every answer fascinating. He stayed engaged enough to be polite, but most of his conversation was with my uncles, with my little cousin about her classes, with my dad about work. Under the table, he held my hand. After dinner, people moved to the living room. Kids ran around, someone put on another game, my mom passed around pie. I was talking to my younger brother near the window when I noticed them across the room. Brianna had Andre pinned by the drink table. She was close, one hand on his chest, leaning in, her mouth moving fast. I saw her slip a folded piece of paper into his hand, her fingers lingering. My heart felt like it was caught in my throat. For a second, I thought, here it is. This is where it all happens again. Then I saw his body language shift. His shoulders straightened, his jaw tightened, not with anger, but with a firm, quiet line being drawn. He took a small step back from her. He said something short. She froze, her smile faltering like someone had flipped a switch. He turned and walked away from her, straight back to me, and sat down close enough that our legs touched. My mom leaned over and whispered, "I like him. He feels steady." Steady. That word echoed in my head all the way home. In the car, I couldn't hold it anymore. "What did she say?" I asked, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted. "By the drinks. I saw her give you something." He was quiet for a moment. "You really want to know?" he asked. "Yes." He let out a slow breath. "She told me you're emotionally damaged and insecure, that I could do better. She gave me her number, said if I ever wanted to talk to someone normal, I should call her." I felt like someone had punched me. "And what did you say?" I whispered. "I told her I wasn't interested," he said calmly, "and that before she tried to wreck anybody else's life, she should probably figure out how to be a decent human being first." Something in me broke then, but not in a bad way, like a tight wire that had been pulled for years finally snapping. Tears started sliding down my face before I could stop them. Andre pulled the car onto the shoulder, put it in park, and turned toward me. He didn't tell me to calm down, didn't say I was overreacting. He just unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled me into his arms, holding me while I shook and sobbed. When I could finally breathe again, I pulled back and asked the question that had been growing in me for years. "Why didn't you fall for it?" I asked. "Every other man has. She's her. She's beautiful and charming, and she knows exactly what to do. Why didn't you?" He looked at me like the answer was obvious. "Because I've met 1,000 women like her," he said. "In prison, in courtrooms, in waiting rooms, people who are so empty inside that they have to prove they can take something from someone else just to feel real. Your cousin isn't confident. She's desperate, and desperate is boring." He brushed my hair back. "And besides," he added, "I'm in love with you." Why would I trade that for someone who doesn't even like herself? Right there, on the side of a road under an ugly streetlight, I kissed him like my life was changing. I thought that was the victory, that she'd finally lost, that I'd finally won. But my family wasn't ready to let me have that. A week later, my mom called. Her voice had that brittle edge it always got before a fight. "Maya, we need to talk about Andre," she said. "What about him?" I asked. "Brianna came over yesterday," she replied. "She was very upset. She said you brought a convicted felon to Thanksgiving and didn't tell anyone. She said she found articles about his case online. She said she felt unsafe." Of course she did. The second she couldn't have him, she had to frame herself as the victim. "Mom," I said, my anger tightening each word, "Andre served his time. He's working. He's living quietly. He didn't hurt her. She's just furious he didn't fall for her." "This isn't about that," my mom snapped. "This is about you bringing someone with that kind of past into our home without warning. Your father is very upset. Your grandmother is scared." Scared. Of the man who'd eaten at their table, answered their questions kindly, helped my grandfather to his chair. I hung up on her. Within hours, the texts started. My aunt said I had no respect for the family. One cousin accused me of being selfish. Another said, "You don't know who people like that really are. We're just worried." My younger brother, bless him, sent one simple message. "Brianna is being dramatic. Andre seems solid. Don't let them rewrite this." When I told Andre what was happening, he didn't get angry. He looked defeated. "I knew this might happen," he said quietly. "People like the idea of second chances until they see what it actually looks like. Most aren't ready for it." "It's not your fault," I insisted. "They're just using your past because they can't stand that you chose me, that you saw through her. That's all this is." I believed that, but I also knew that for Andre, things weren't so simple. A rumor, a whisper, a false complaint, any of it could cling to him in ways it never would to someone without a record. Then Jenna, my other cousin, called and asked to meet in person. I almost said no, but something in her voice made me agree. We sat in a coffee shop, steam rising from untouched drinks. Jenna looked like she hadn't slept well in weeks. "Brianna's been in therapy for a while," she started. "Real therapy. Panic attacks, mood swings, all that. The therapist told her she has issues with validation, especially from men." I said nothing. "The therapist actually told her she needed to apologize to you," Jenna went on. "Like, really confront what she's done. But Brianna refused. She said you're just jealous and bitter and that you blow things out of proportion." That didn't surprise me. "Not really." "But that's not why I called you," Jenna said, leaning in. "She's gone over the line now. She told me how Brianna had become obsessed with Andre after Thanksgiving, how she'd found his old Facebook, how she'd dug up news articles from his trial, how she'd messaged an ex-girlfriend of his asking questions. "She's been telling the family he's dangerous," Jenna said, "and now she's talking about going to the police. She wants to file some kind of report, say he made her feel threatened, that he said weird things when you weren't around." My skin went cold. "She's lying," I said. "He didn't do anything." "I know," Jenna said. "That's why I'm telling you. She's not thinking straight. She's spinning out, and desperate people do crazy things." I left the cafe feeling like the ground had tilted under my feet. I called Andre the minute I got outside and told him everything. He listened in silence. "We need to stop her," I said. "Talk to a lawyer, talk to my parents, something. We can't just wait for her to blow up your life again." "Maya," he said, "what if we let her?" I stopped walking. "Let her what?" "Let her lie," he said. "Let her make it official. Put it on paper. Then we prove she's lying." "How?" I demanded. "Once it's filed, it'll follow you. Even if it gets thrown out, it'll still be in some system next to your name." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I didn't tell you this because it weirds people out," he said, "but I record a lot of conversations, not all the time, just when my gut tells me I might need proof later." He opened his voice memos and scrolled until he found what he wanted. "I recorded our conversation by the drink table," he said. "The one where she gave me her number." He hit play. I heard Brianna's voice, clear as if she were in the room with us. "Maya is damaged and insecure," she said on the recording. I heard the false sweetness in her tone. "You seem smart. You could do better. Here's my number. Call me if you ever want to talk to someone normal." Then Andre's voice. "I'm not interested. You should probably learn to be a better person before you try to ruin anyone else's life." Then Brianna again, sharp and mocking. "Wow, you're just like her. Judgmental. Boring." The recording clicked off. "This proves she came on to me," Andre said quietly. "If she tries to claim I scared her or harassed her, this shows the opposite." I didn't know whether to be grateful or furious that he'd had to develop habits like that just to survive. We decided to wait. If she filed, we'd use the recording. If she didn't, we'd leave it alone and get on with our lives. 3 weeks passed without incident. I started to hope that maybe, somehow, Jenna had been wrong, that Brianna had backed away from the edge. Then my mother called and said Brianna had been in a minor car accident. Nothing serious, more of a scare than anything, but she was at the hospital and had asked to see me. At first, I said no. I was done being pulled in and out of their drama. But that old familiar guilt gnawed at me, the one they'd fed me my whole life. Good daughters show up, good cousins forgive, good girls don't hold grudges. I ended up going. Brianna was propped up in a hospital bed, a small bandage on her forehead, her hair a little messy for once. Without the full armor of makeup and perfect lighting, she looked younger, smaller. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I almost didn't," I answered honestly. "Mom said you wanted to talk." She stared at her hands for a moment, fidgeting with the blanket. "I do," she said quietly. "I need to tell you something." I stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, every muscle in me braced. "I've been really messed up for a long time," she began. "My therapist says I use attention like a drug, especially from men, that I've been using it to avoid dealing with other stuff." She glanced up briefly, then looked away. "When we were kids," she continued, voice trembling, "one of Dad's friends, he did things. When I was 12, I told my parents. They didn't believe me. They said I was making trouble. I learned pretty fast that my body wasn't mine. It was a problem or a tool, nothing else." Tears began to slide down her cheeks. She talked about realizing as a teenager that if she flirted, she could get good grades bumped, free drinks, special treatment. She talked about how being the pretty one started as a compliment and ended up feeling like a cage. "And then there was you," she said softly. "You with your decent grades and your normal clothes and your stupid sense of humor that everyone liked without you trying. You got internships and a job and your own apartment. You had things I didn't know how to have. So I convinced myself that if I could take the one thing you had that I didn't, your boyfriends, I'd be winning." I swallowed hard. "It worked," I said. "You did take them." "I know." She sobbed then, quietly. "I know, and I'm so sorry. For Sean, for Ethan, for all of them, for every time I laughed in your face while I was doing it, for every holiday I turned into a competition you didn't even know you were in." She took a shaky breath. "I was going to lie about Andre," she admitted. "I was ready to walk into a police station and make up a story. My therapist found out. She told me that if I did, I would ruin him and I would ruin myself. She said I had to look at why I wanted to hurt you so badly in the first place." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "I came so close," she whispered. "And that scares me." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in my life, I saw not the perfect hair, the perfect skin, the perfect body. I saw someone hollowed out and terrified, someone holding a mask that weighed too much. "I don't forgive you," I said finally. "Not right now. Maybe not ever. You took years of my life and shredded them. You made me doubt every good thing that tried to come near me. That doesn't get fixed with an apology and a sob story." She nodded, crying harder. "But," I added, "I appreciate you finally telling the truth, out loud." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth," I said, "I hope you really do the work. I hope you figure out who you are beyond being looked at. I hope you heal. But I can't be part of that process. Don't call me. Don't contact Andre. Just focus on yourself and leave us alone." In the hallway, I ran into Jenna, who had been waiting. "How did it go?" she asked. "I told her I didn't forgive her," I said, but I heard her. Jenna hugged me. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. She got a call from her therapist this morning. The police had followed up about the appointment she made to file that report. That's what scared her straight, I think. I nodded slowly. She really had stood on the edge of ruining everything, and she'd only stepped back when she realized she could hurt herself in the fallout. Later that night, I told Andre everything. He listened, his face unreadable. "So it's done?" he asked softly. "I think so," I said. "At least for now." "Good," he replied, "because I don't want to waste any more of our time on her." He hesitated. "I want to ask you something," he said finally. A tiny panic fluttered in my chest. "What?" "Move in with me," he said. I blinked. "What?" "Move in," he repeated. "I know it's soon, but I spent 6.5 years sleeping in a concrete box. I'm not interested in pretending I don't know what I want. I love you. I want you in my everyday, coffee, bad TV, laundry, all of it. Not just weekends and holidays we choose." In March, I did it. I packed up my one-bedroom apartment, my mismatched dishes and sagging couch, my old books and thrift store art, and I moved into a small place near his work. The floors were a little crooked, and the bathroom sink made a weird sound, but it was ours. We adopted a dog from the shelter, a scrawny black and brown mutt with too much energy and a wagging tail that never stopped. We named him Pixel because he was small and chaotic and somehow completed the picture. Life got quiet in the best way. Work, dinner, walks with Pixel, late-night talks, shared grocery lists. We built something ordinary and strong while the storm of my family stayed at a distance. I skipped Easter, and Mother's Day, and 4th of July. My mom called in June, sobbing that I was tearing the family apart. "No," I told her this time, voice steady. "The family was always torn. I'm just not pretending anymore." Months passed. Then one afternoon, a handwritten letter arrived in our mailbox with my name on it. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Brianna. Inside was a long letter. No excuses, but plenty of explanations. She wrote about the abuse she mentioned in the hospital, about years of not being believed, about how she leaned on her beauty as a shield and a weapon, how the only time she felt in control was when she was proving she could take what other people valued. She wrote about watching me live a life that looked stable from the outside. The job, the apartment, the independence, how it made her feel small and terrified and behind. How in her mind, if she could wreck my relationships, I wouldn't be ahead of her anymore. She wrote about the therapy she was now in 3 times a week, about medication, group sessions, learning to sit with her own emptiness without stuffing someone else's happiness into it. At the end of the letter, she'd stapled a printed photo. It was of her and one of my exes, Logan, at a party. They were both smiling, his arm around her like he'd never known me. On the back of the photo, in ink, she'd written, "I spent so long trying to make you feel invisible. The truth is, I was always the one who felt that way." I showed the letter to Andre. He read it, folded it carefully, and handed it back to me. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "You don't owe her anything," he reminded me gently. "Not forgiveness, not closure, not friendship. Whether she actually changes or not, that's her problem to solve, not yours." He was right. He usually was. I wrote back a short letter. I said I was sorry for what she had gone through. I said I believed she was in pain. I said I needed distance. That maybe one day, if we were both different people, we could try to build some kind of relationship, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. She wrote back just once more. "I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes, or I'll let you go if that's better for you." A year and a half later, Jenna called again, excitement in her voice. "Don't flip out," she said, "but Brianna's engaged." "To who?" I asked cautiously. "To a woman," she said. "Her name is Monica. They met in group therapy. They've been together a year. And Maya, she's different. Calmer. Softer. It doesn't feel like an act anymore." Part of me bristled. Part of me was curious. "She wants to invite you to the wedding," Jenna continued, "but she's too scared to reach out herself. She said if you say no, she'll understand." That night, I told Andre everything. "If you want to go, I'll be right beside you," he said. "If you don't, I'll be on this couch with takeout waiting for you. Either way, I've got you." The next day, I called Brianna. We ended up talking for 2 hours. It was strange. No competition, no barbed comments, no passive-aggressive digs, just 2 women talking like maybe someday they could be sisters instead of enemies. She told me about Monica, about how scary it was to love someone who loved her for her personality, her scars, her hard work, not her face or her body. She told me about setting boundaries with our family, about finally telling Aunt Linda no and walking away from Nana when she started in with her usual poison. I told her about Andre, about Pixel, about our crooked little apartment and our new, boringly beautiful routines, laundry, grocery runs, arguing over brands of coffee. The kind of life I used to think was too dull to want, now the exact life I cherished. At the end of the call, her voice trembled just slightly. "If I send you an invitation, would you come?" she asked. I thought of all the Thanksgivings, all the nights I'd cried alone in my car, all the times my family told me my reality was wrong. I thought of the girl who'd nearly lied to police to destroy the man I loved. And then I thought of Andre's steady hands, his recorded proof, the way he'd stood firm against her without turning cruel. I thought of how far I'd come from that insecure girl who believed she deserved to be overshadowed. "Yes," I said slowly. "I'll come." The wedding is in 2 months. I don't know how I'll feel walking back into that world. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust her. I don't know if my family will ever understand why I had to step away to save myself. But here is what I do know. I won't be walking in as the invisible cousin anymore. I won't be the girl who brings a man for inspection and watches him drift to someone shinier. I'll be myself. Maya. The woman who finally believes that her worth isn't measured by who looks at her, or who chooses her, or who her family approves of. Right now, I'm sitting on our slightly tilted couch. Pixel is snoring between me and Andre, his paws twitching in some dog dream. We're arguing, half seriously, about whether we should adopt a cat. Andre says yes. We need balance, he insists. Dog for chaos, cat for judgment. It's a perfect system. I say we already live in a tiny apartment with one fur tornado and a man who leaves socks everywhere. Adding a cat might tip us into full-blown madness. I'm laughing as I argue with him. Laughing because this ridiculous, quiet, soft life is mine. With a man who once had nothing and now builds walls and homes and a future with me. With a dog who was abandoned and now takes up more couch space than either of us. My phone buzzes. It's a message from Brianna. Thank you for saying yes to the wedding. It means more than you know. I stare at it for a moment, then type back, see you there. I don't know what will happen that day. Maybe we'll hug and cry and start something new. Maybe we'll nod from across the room and keep our distance. Maybe nothing will really change at all. But for the first time in my life, it doesn't terrify me. Because I have Andre. And Pixel. And this small, ordinary home that feels like freedom. Because I finally built a life no one else gets to control or ruin. And that, after everything, is enough. More than enough. It's everything.